guys, welcome to HOB TV. This is episode 12. We first want to start off by thanking those that have subscribed, those that are tuning in and watching from all over. We see we got some from Philippines, over the world. Kazakhstan, right?
Worldwide.
You said, worldwide, man. But look if you guys haven't heard or seen, we started an Instagram page, House of Boxing TV. Make sure you guys go follow us on Instagram. We'll be posting pictures and staying tuned with us. We're going to go into this episode is going to be on the Canelo Jacobs fight, the big fight that's coming up. And actually, behind us, as you can see, we got a different background for this episode. Behind us, Canelo has been in the rings a few times for a couple of his media days, 3 or 4 media days.
In this actual ring, right?
In this actual ring here. So yeah, man, we're gonna go into the 5 storylines going into Canelo versus Jacobs. I'm gonna pass it over to my boy Steve. He's gonna break it down for us.
Hey, what's up, guys? As David said, we want to thank everyone for tuning in to our interview with welterweight prospect Elias Diaz. He fights tomorrow. I'll be there in TJ watching. He came in at 146.5 today, so he's right on weight. And barring any setbacks, if Trump doesn't close the border down like he says, I'll be there in TJ. So we wish Elias Diaz the best of luck. Now, as David mentioned, this is the first of 3 HOB TV Canelo versus Jacobs preview show. It's a big fight, so we're gonna do it justice. We're gonna give it its due. So in this episode, we're gonna discuss the 5 biggest storylines pertaining to Canelo versus Jacobs. The first storyline heading into this fight is also the most controversial. This has caused for many a debate and maybe even one here between us.
Yeah.
Right? Of course, I'm talking about the Rehydration Clause. Now, this clause was put into place by Golden Boy Promotions. It's based on a long-time ruling by the IBF, which is the current bout that Danny Jacobs holds. The clause states that a second-day weigh-in will take place the morning of the fight and that neither fighter will be able to come in over 170 pounds on that second-day weigh-in. So to reiterate, at Friday's initial weigh-in, both fighters cannot come in over 160, and on the second-day weigh-in on Saturday, they can't rehydrate to over 170 pounds. Now, Jacobs, the naturally bigger man, has been pretty outspoken about this clause. And in an interview with Fight Hype, Jacobs stated, and I quote, "True champions don't put stipulations in contracts like that to get a little advantage." Now, Jacobs would go on to say that this is not championship behavior from Canelo, and he added that this is very insulting to the sport, this meaning the Rehydration Clause. Now, David, what's your thought on this clause overall and on Danny Jacobs' comments?
I think it's just Canelo is, fighters have done it before, man. Cotto has done it before. Mayweather puts his little restrictions on, fighters. No one says nothing about that. But Canelo is the face of boxing right now, man. And if he wants to do that, sure enough. And it's 10 pounds. When I used to fight professionally, I used to gain about 10 pounds, 10 pounds the next day. I believe the rules also states that the weigh-in has to be done at 8 in the morning. So, he has a good lunch to put on more weight if he wants. But 10 pounds is not a lot, man. But again, he is a bigger guy. And he also did it for his last fight, because I believe that was a rule that they had for that fight.
Because I think the IBF type.
Exactly. So it is what it is, man. He has to do it. I think Canelo, he's the face of boxing right now. If he wants to do that, hey, why not?
Yeah, he's the A side.
Yeah.
Canelo did something similar to this for the Chavez fight. Remember?
Yeah.
164, I think, was the weight for that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And Chavez had been used to being the A side all his life because of mainly his dad's name and that Chavez legacy. But Canelo switched the tables on him and had that clause in there. And Chavez looked like the Walking Dead overall, right? That whole fight through. Landed on, I think 70 punches the whole fight.
Yeah.
Now, Danny Jacobs, as you said, this isn't something new to him. He just went through this last October when he fought Derevyanchenko for the IBF title, which he won. Now, he had some trouble in that fight. He was getting, hit with some clean body shots and straight rights. He won by split decision, but maybe that's why, bottom line, Jacobs, is being opposed to it now because he had a little bit of trouble in that last fight. But overall, he knew what he was getting into when he signed the contract. He's getting all these millions despite being
they both
unhappy.
agreed to it, right? Yeah.
And that's the bottom line here is that, you know, if he didn't like it, why sign the contract?
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So storyline number 2 here. Storyline number 2, Dave. Jacobs needs a knockout to win because he will not get a decision against Canelo in Las Vegas. Now, when asked about that and the judges, Jacobs stated, "We're going to bring attention to the judges to make sure everybody's accountable for this." What are your thoughts on that, Dave?
I mean, if he wins convincingly, man, I think he'll win, right? But I mean, I don't see it happening. I mean, I don't see him knocking him out. He hasn't knocked anyone out since 2016, and that was with Sergio Mora. So, I mean,
he's already past his prime.
Yeah, exactly.
Way past his prime.
Exactly. So, I mean, I don't see that happening. Does he need to do it? I don't think so. I mean, if he wins convincingly, I think he'll get the win. But I don't see it happening. I see Canelo stopping him, dude, man. So, but I mean, it's nothing to keep an eye out.
Yeah. Well, you know, they call Jacobs the miracle man, right?
Yeah.
Jacobs beat cancer, you know, early on in his life and career. They call him the miracle man. Well, he's going to need a miracle knockout to win this. That's going to be about the only shot because there's just no way that this older version of Jacobs is going to sit there and outbox the younger Canelo for the duration of 12 rounds. But look, I think anybody that faces Canelo from here on out, including Triple G, needs a knockout to defeat Canelo. I actually think that Jacobs could be up 8 rounds to 4 or 9 rounds to 3, and he still will not get the win, and that's just the nature of the business. You mentioned he was the A side. They've always gotten favorable calls. The NBA is the same way. Any other sport, Tom Brady, Steph Curry, they're always going to get the calls, right? Canelo's no different, right?
Yeah.
Now, storyline number 3. Now, we're going to turn the tables. The second one was Jacobs needs a knockout. Number 3 is, does Canelo need a knockout over Jacobs to silence the critics?
I mean, I'm not too sure if he needs to, but if he does, I mean, he sure will. I mean, knocking out Jacobs will definitely solidify his pound-for-pound status, maybe put him at number 1.
You're getting ahead of our storylines.
Yeah, but look at, man, I mean, if he knocks out Jacobs, man, it'll definitely put him at the top of the middleweight. He'll have 3 belts at the middleweight. The only thing, he'll be missing one of the belts, which he'll possibly get it by the end of the year. And you know, so I mean, I'm not sure. Like I said, I'm not too sure if he has to do it, but if he does, it's definitely gonna boost up his confidence and make him even that, like I said, at the pound for pound, man.
I mean, I think Canelo does need a knockout. He has yet to score a knockout or stoppage at 160. Furthermore, say what you want. You're not gonna like to hear this, buddy. Okay. But one of the few things missing from Canelo's resume is a knockout or TKO over a truly elite opponent. Now, you can say Amir Khan, but we all know the circumstances surrounding that weight. I think this would be the perfect opportunity for Canelo to do this against a bigger, smarter, not smarter, but smart and respected opponent like Jacobs. This is a perfect version of Danny Jacobs to do that against. He's definitely had some wear and tear. Took some punishment in his last fight against Derevyanchenko. He hit the canvas against Triple G, hit the canvas against Sergio Mora. What would be a better way to one-up Triple G than to do something he couldn't do, and that is to knock out Danny Jacobs?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it'll definitely, like I said, man, it'll definitely boost up his confidence, and I can see it happening. I mean, I see it happening. I see him dropping him in the late rounds. Daniel Jacobs gets tired in the later rounds. He tends to sit there, try to trade, which I think will be his downfall in this fight.
Yeah. You know, and the whole thing of Jacobs needing a knockout, like you said, he hadn't got one in 3 years.
Yeah.
You know, and Jacobs couldn't knock out lesser fighters in Luis Arias or Selecki. Mm-hmm. You know, he didn't get one against Derevyanchenko, and guess what? He's not going to get one here, you know. And
I will point out, too, Canelo has a great chin. And he has good defense, which is very underrated. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I don't see it happening.
Yes, okay. So, we both say Jacobs needs a knockout?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I say Canelo needs a knockout, and you say he doesn't, right?
I don't know.
Okay.
No.
All right.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it right here. Storyline number 4, guys. A win over Jacobs would be Canelo's best victory of his career. Now, we mentioned his resume. You know, it's impressive, right? But where would this win over Jacobs rank in his legacy and his career.
I mean, I wouldn't put it number one because obviously the win against Triple G goes at number one. And so, I mean, it'll definitely put it up there, man. Like you said, if he stops him by KO, it'll possibly be number two. But I think the best win right now is against Triple G. That definitely has to. That guy was the scary man, the boogeyman. Everyone was scared of him, right? And hey, when he beats him the third time, that'll probably replace it being number one, right?
Well, I'm not gonna say that Triple G was his best win because it wasn't a decisive victory. You know,
Hey.
You got to do it convincingly. You got to beat the champion convincingly, right? A draw, if anything. Okay, but this is a tricky question. Where will we rank Jacobs as far as Canelo's victory? Should he win? Because for me, Miguel Cotto is the best victory Canelo's had. I like what he did boxing-wise against Cotto, who's a bona fide legend in the sport. But I will say this, and this is going back to the last question. If Canelo were to knock Jacobs out, I would say that yes, Jacobs is the best victory of his career because nobody knocks Jacobs out unless you're Dmitry Putrov, right? Yeah. If Canelo were to win by decision or disputed decision or split decision, I would still say that Cotto was his best victory of his career.
Yeah.
Right? So moving on, guys, to our fifth and final storyline. It's been pretty fun so far. Spirited debate here. Yeah. But our final storyline, guys, is does a win over Jacobs make Canelo pound for pound number one in your opinion?
Like I said before, man, I was ahead of you. I say yes. This definitely puts him at number one. Like I mentioned before, he's going to have the 3 belts at the middleweight division, and I see him claiming a 4th one by the end of the year. So, I mean, I definitely see him being pound for pound after this fight, and especially if he knocks out Dan Jacobs.
Okay, now, look, you're going to love me now. Canelo fans, you hated me like 2 storylines ago. You guys are going to love me now. Well, let me preface this answer by saying that 2019 could be a banner year for Canelo. He could potentially have one of the greatest years of any fighter at any time of all time. Should he defeat Jacobs, Triple G, and another top middleweight, maybe Andrade, maybe somebody else in the same year, he'd undoubtedly win 2019 Fighter of the Year, and Eddie Reynoso would win 2019 Trainer of the Year. His legacy would be sealed all in this year alone. Now, to get to the question, universally, all the publications have some combination of Lomachenko number 1, Crawford number 2, and Canelo number 3. Or Crawford number 1, Loma number 2, Canelo number 3. But they almost all have Canelo in that number 3 spot. Now for me, number 1 comes down to Lomachenko or Canelo. Now if anyone should be in that number 3 slot, it should be Terrence Crawford. I'd actually rank Spence ahead of Crawford. And watch, many people will have Crawford number 1, you know, when he beats Khan, you know. When he beats Khan, like everybody knows he will, that people are going to act all surprised, oh my gosh, he's number 1 pound for pound. Yeah. But how are you going to rank Crawford number 1 for beating an older version of a guy Canelo beat 3 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. So I've had Lomachenko number 1 based on all his wins, you know, his wins against Rigondeaux and Linares. Then he had shoulder surgery, beat Pedraza, and now he's facing the guy in Crolla in a match that Bob Arum is not even happy about, right? Lomachenko is a 100-to-1 favorite in many sports books going into tomorrow's fight. Now, let me repeat that, 100-to-1 favorite. So it goes to show how competitive odd makers believe it will be or won't be. Now, I like Lomachenko in rounds 4 to 6, by the way, but after this fight, the thinking is that he'll fight Comey next. Now, Canelo is coming off wins versus Triple G, Fielding. He's fighting Jacobs and perhaps Triple G after that. Boxing is a what have you done for me lately sport. So based on that, yes, if Canelo beats Jacobs soundly, I'd rank him pound for pound number 1 over Lomachenko. But people will still have Crawford number 1 when he beats Khan. So the debate after that will be who's pound for pound number 1, Crawford or Canelo. So what do you think of the Loma and Canelo battle for that number 1 pound for pound? Because you don't believe Crawford is pound for pound number 1.
No, I definitely don't think Crawford. I think it's definitely close, man, between Lomachenko and Canelo. I don't get why so many boxing experts and writers have Crawford so high on the list at number 1 or 2. I mean, he's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong, and he's mean, man. He goes for the finish. I think if he was to fight Spence and beat Spence, that'll definitely put him up. But I mean, I personally feel
that could be a year down the line, year and a half down
exactly.
the line.
And I mean, who knows if they're even talking yet? And after that Twitter post by Bob Arum, so we'll see, man.
We're gonna have to have another Twitter episode here.
Exactly.
Right. But that was pretty fun. The 5 storylines, guys. Like I said, that was the first preview of 3. So if you liked this one, tune into the next 2. Moving on to another middleweight fighters, talking about the middleweight division, middleweight madness here. Jaime Munguia, one of our favorite up-and-coming fighters, young fighters. This Saturday on DAZN from Monterrey, Mexico, is the return of Jaime Munguia. His 154 titles at stake, and he's fighting against Dennis Hogan. Now, he's expected to win this one pretty handily.
Yeah.
We do too. For me, the 2 big storylines, this is a storyline episode. So the 2 big storylines for Jaime Munguia's Saturday fight for me is Tejera, who's on the undercard, could potentially be Munguia's next opponent after this fight, okay?
Oh, wow.
So I think it's going to be either Tejera or Jesse Vargas, should he come out successful against Humberto Soto. We know Vargas, we talked about that, Vargas calling out Munguia in the past. He's on the zone too, that would be easy to make.
Yeah.
So which route do you think Jaime Munguia will go?
I think they're going to take it slow with him, man. So he's going to go with the guy on the undercard. I think they'll save Jesse Vargas for the end of the year. So, but I definitely think he has to work on some of his defense, man. And we'll see how we look Saturday. Well, he's definitely a power puncher, an exciting fighter.
You're just getting ahead of the game here, man. That was my second storyline.
Really? Oh, man.
Sort of horses. No. Okay, but second storyline. Kind of answered it. No.
Yeah.
Okay, Robert Alcazar, this is his 5th fight with Jaime Munguia. Jaime Munguia, as you said, had some defensive problems.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to be progressing defensively under Robert Alcazar. They brought in the strength and conditioning coach, another coach to help him out. David, do you think Robert Alcazar is on the hot seat as Jaime Munguia's trainer?
I mean, it's tough, man, to put coaches in these positions when he never built that fighter, man. So it's hard to put him in the hot seat for blaming him for the problems. I mean, this guy's been boxing this kid's been boxing all his life,
Yeah.
So those habits have been instilled in him since he was a young kid, man. But he is tough. He's an exciting fighter. He does need to work on his defense, like we said. I mean, I'm not sure if Robert Alcazar is the person that'll instill that into him. But we'll just have to see, man, and I hope he gets it because, I mean, that's all he really needs, man. He'll be an exciting fighter. He definitely has the fan base around him. So we'll just have to see. But, I mean, like I said before, I wouldn't put all the blame on Robert Alcazar.
Yeah.
And
well, unfortunately, the trainers, coaches in any sport are going to take the brunt of the heat. I think he is on the hot seat. The fact that they brought in additional people will kind of for me, it's signaling something, all right? Mm-hmm. Now, if Munguia is planning to go to 160, and he shouldn't take a lot of punishment from Hogan. Hogan has a pretty soft resume.
Yeah.
He's not on the same level as Munguia. If he takes punishment again Saturday, you really got to look into that, man, because
of course.
You don't want him to be a Antonio Margarito type
exactly.
fighter. He has so much more potential. His ceiling is so much higher to be greater than Margarito.
Yeah.
That at 22 years old, you got to harness that and you got to take care of that ASAP.
Yeah.
So if they are planning to move up to 160 and the big hitters are at 160, you don't want to go into that division having these defensive issues, man. Especially if you're calling out guys like Triple G right now. They're going to welcome you when you get there, and they're going to do it in a hard way.
Yeah.
So, let's watch for that Saturday night, see if he progresses, see if he does anything better defensively.
Exactly.
And then we'll see after that if he goes to Vargas or Tejera, and after that he'll go to 160.
Yeah, and also on the card is Diego De La Hoya. He's also fighting on that DAZN card. I believe he moved up in weight as well because he had some weight issues his last fight.
He like Jojo Diaz moved up.
Yeah, so I mean, we can definitely look out for him on that card. There's also some other fights this weekend. We got Clarissa Shields, and
the most significant women's boxing match.
Yeah,
in history.
this Saturday, exactly, on Showtime.
Middleweights, I believe.
So, also Peter Quillen, if you didn't know, Peter Quillen is fighting
Kid Chocolate's
on.
coming back.
He's
man.
he's
Kid Chocolate
fighting on
appearance.
Fox Sports 1. So
They took him right off that milk carton. He was missing for a minute.
and he's fighting Caleb
back.
Trucks, which Danny Jacobs, one of his fights that he beat him.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. So there's definitely boxing this weekend. Lomachenko tomorrow. Gilberto Ramirez is fighting on that card as well. There's definitely a boxing weekend and definitely a good time to be tuning in to boxing, right?
In our next episode, we're gonna break down all the fights of spring and summer coming up. So stay tuned for that one.
Exactly. So yeah, man. Thank you guys for tuning on in into this episode. Like I said, mentioned earlier in the episode, go ahead and follow our Instagram page, House of Boxing TV. Thank you guys again for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, guys.